can't imagine my mom ever writing poetry and yet.
Poema para Gus, que
A
siempre
poem for
dijo que
Gus,
era muy bien.
who always said the wedding was a bad idea. Our father never hit us kids, at least not very hard.
Oh,
Before the day my brother said with teenage disregard that he'd be dead before he'd see a wedding in our yard.
una cometa.
My father made him come, of course, but Gus stood far apart, just flew his kite and bottled up the storm inside his heart.
Ay, me re divierto esto.
I tried to talk him out of it, but though he'd never met her, we don't need a stepmom, were the words that I remember.
Se re enojó. Acá. Wow.
When the time for photos came, Dad ordered him to come here. But
Come
Gus
here.
declined, and as a sign held up his middle finger.
No. Hizo fuck you. Get over here.
Picked up and panicked.
Y entonces se levantó y le
went.
llamó.
But all the humans did that day was go inside the tent.
No, Buda arrastra todo.
The rain came down in buckets then, but no one seemed afraid that nature might destroy the tent our dad had crudely made. The thunder sounded much too close and full of angry power. All
Este es...
my father said to this was, make the music louder.
Make the music louder y... Traiga más cerveza. Se cagó muriendo.
I wish that I could truly say I thought about you on that day. Out there on the beach alone, just you, the wind, the sea and foam. But I didn't. Until we found you.
Este también era re chiquito.
She never talked about him, but Mom told me once if I was a boy, they were going to name me Gus.
Ay, la cometita. Cosita, bebé. ¿Y esto?
My mom moved up to the loft after her brothers died. At the time, it was as far away as she could get.
Se mudó al ático. Rompepija. Ay, re lindo el cuarto de la mami.
She spent a summer building houses in Calcutta, where she met my dad, Sanjay. Religion was another thing my mom never talked about, but I think it helped her a lot after her dad died. My mom moved to India a week after graduation and got a job teaching English. Louis was born a year later. When my dad died, I don't think Mom knew where else to go. I'm sure Edie was happy to have her back. And to see kids in the house again.
Re triste.
The house had to get a little bigger, but Edie was used to that. And for a while, things were good. Almost normal, but it didn't last.
Ay, es re lindo. Es como tipo un classroom. Factor fiction. Or family fiction. Es re lindo. Siento que hay muchos detalles. Un classroom.
Beginning of the end was Milton's 10th birthday, when Edie gave him a castle.
Le regalaba un castillo. ¿Qué mierda le regalaba, no?
After Milton disappeared, the only thing he left behind was a room full of paintings.
1992 Milton, es chiquito. Chiquito, es más grande que yo. Qué mierda digo, ¿no? God, alta casa tenía Milton. No, no te bajes. Ay, soy una pelotuda. Perdonen, perdonen. Perdonen. Milton Finch.
In
El pincel
the
mágico.
Magic Paintbrush.
Ah, era recapo el guachín. Ah, se fue a la mierda en un dibujo.
I was 4 when Milton disappeared.
Pero dice 1992-2003. Encontraron la muerte, entonces. Se desapareció, pero... rari todo, rari.
Mom spent months searching for my brother. Then she sealed the doors. Whatever Milton had found in the house, Mom didn't want it getting out. Mom definitely blamed Edie, but I think Louis blamed himself. After he graduated, he just spent more and more time in his room. Until Mom got him a job at the cannery. Everyone always told me to stay out of Lewis's room. Except Lewis.
Tranqui, Lewis, un copado era. Creo que el barco no va ahí. No, yo tampoco, pero como no manejo barcos, no opino, ¿viste? Ay, ¿por qué soy tan tosca? No, alta panza tiene. Yo dije que estaba embarazada, ¿vieron? No, no, ¿por qué se me va...? Perdonen, chiquis, No sé para dónde me tengo que mover. Ay, me pongo nerviosa. Paren que me pongo nerviosa y no puedo. Si ustedes lo juegan se van a dar cuenta que igual el juego es re poco... Ahí va, ahí va. Ay, no, Trolli. Ay, no probé conectando el joystick. Claro, capaz se juega con joystick. Ahí va, ahí va, ahí va. Pude.
Lewis's room smelled very, very familiar. That part of him lived on.
Olía familiar esta, re drogona.
Dear Mrs. Finch, as Lewis's psychiatrist, I can understand your desire for an explanation. As I see it, the trouble began in January, shortly after we convinced your son to seek treatment for substance abuse. Newly sober, I believe Lewis first noticed the monotony of his daily life. He kept working at the cannery, but he withdrew part of himself. In our sessions, I saw the same behavior. His mind began to wander. I asked him to describe it. He said he started small.
Tengo que hacer dos cosas a la vez.
Imagining a labyrinth.
No, un laberinto.
He'd feel his way about. Then something moved. Bats. And toads. And things that have not names. He knew it was all in his head. He took it very seriously. I had hoped he'd find himself. But he found something more.
What the fuck? No, esta parte está genial, boludo.
I worried about him then.
No, no, no. Está muy bien hecho. Ay.
Daydreaming at the cannery. I spoke with his boss. But he said Lewis had become a model employee. Methodical, tireless, focused, like a whole new Lewis. So I let him
no
go
puedo
on.
leer.
I even encouraged him. It seemed very promising at first. He told me he'd made a new friend.
La que se concentra y no tiene papá.
La p...
On the edge of a city he named Lewis Topia.
Ok.
He built the city up slowly, brick by brick. Then he made musicians
Mierda, se fumó este pendejo.
and songs for them to play. He talked about starting a band. And he was always humming something. Every day his imagination grew stronger. He no longer spoke at the cannery,
The fuck?
but his chopping was as reliable as ever. Then one day it struck him that all the cheering crowds, even the stones under his feet, were all in his imagination. So he could do whatever he wished. He held an election for mayor,
Se posturó para ser alcalde.
and he won. They begged him to stay, but his mind was already wandering. It became a game for him.
Wow.
He'd conquer a city, then immediately push on. New Louisville. St. Louis.
San Luis.
he started drifting away from our reality. Minneapolis. Until one day he forgot to go
Minneapolis.
home from the cannery.
No, mejor que se me ir a la casa.
Even as his mother pleaded with him, part of Lewis kept sailing on. In Lewisburg, he heard rumors of a
Un hermoso príncipe, una apuesta reina. Ay, ¿le hacemos trolo? Vamos a hacerlo trolo. Vamos a hacerlo trolo, vamos a hacerlo trolo.
beautiful prince. The prince was on his own quest for
Estaba buscando arcoíris radiantes. Sí, amo que me va a elegir.
radiant rainbows.
Machu.
He followed the sound of his
Vio el sonido de su arpa de plata.
silver harp.
God.
His chase led him to a golden palace east of the sun and west of the moon. Even then, his logic remained sound. He knew the world was all in his imagination,
Sí, cortando pescado, ¿entendés? What the fuck.
but he was so proud of having created it. In his own eyes, he'd become something greater than a king, someone who'd never known success in the real world. I think it was overwhelming. And then it struck him that the real Lewis was not the one chopping salmon, but the one climbing the steps of a golden palace.
Se volvió completamente loco el chabón.
My
Disoció.
imagination is as real as my body, he told me. It was hard to argue with him.
Disoció.
He began to forget the world we know. I think it pained him to remember Lewis, the cannery worker.
Ay, sí, él, mira.
He began to despise the man with a royal contempt.
Finch. ¿Se mató?
I still thought I could save him. Even after he said he was being crowned king over all the lands of wonder. The palace would be packed with his companions, including the wise Calico who'd insisted on advising him.
Están todos recontentos.
His prince waited, holding his crown.
Ay, su príncipe lo esperaba.
There was only one thing left to do.
Los pescaditos.
Bend down his head.
No. Ese le corta la cabeza.
And the rest I think you know. Mrs. Finch, your son was a kind man who will be missed by all of us who knew him.
My brother was really cool. I wish you could have met him.
Una play.
Lewis and I spent a lot of time playing games together, but he was surprisingly bad at them. He died a lot.
Buah. Sos re graciosa, guacho.
On the way back from Lewis's funeral, my mom told me to start packing. She waited until the day before we left to tell Edie. I'm not sure if she wanted to make it easier or harder. I wish we'd stayed. But I understand why we left. What happened that night had been coming for a long time. Maybe I should have come sooner. But it had to end one way or another. All that's left now is to tell you about that last night. That whole last day, Edie just watched us pack and didn't say a word. Until supper, when she raised her glass and said,
"To our final night together, and all our final nights apart."
Grandma, you know what I said about alcohol. Some of your medications are very
Edith,
specific.
I left a present for you in the hallway. Why don't you go open it? The grown-ups have to argue now.
I'm sorry, you're right. We're all leaving tomorrow. Let's just enjoy our last...
I'm not leaving.
Edith, you're excused.
Le llevaron la mierda a la pendeja, ok.
the power had been shut off that morning, but Edie always had plenty of candles. When my mom sealed the library, I don't think she knew about the other entrance. Or that Edie had a key to it.
La vela ahí, se va a quemar todo, todos los libros.
That thing you're afraid of isn't going to end when you leave the house. Edith has a right to know these stories.
My children are dead because of your story. I think it's best if Edith and I leave tonight. We'll have the nursing home send a van for you in the morning. Okay?
Dear Edith, there's so many stories I wish I could tell you, but there's only time for one. This is about what happened on the night you were born.
A ver.
That night, the tide went way, way up.
Ay, pero que me dio mucha intriga el juego.
It was the first and last time I ever saw the old house aground.
First.
There'd been an earthquake out in the middle of the ocean.
Ah, mira.
They called it the lowest tide in 1,000 years.
Entonces se veía la casa, claro.
God, it smelled awful. You know, I've seen that house every day of my life, but I never thought I'd go back to it. When the fog rolled in, I lost my way. I got turned around. I started seeing things.
Trae todo.
Things I'd forgotten had ever existed. When I saw them, they felt like old friends. That night, a lot of things came back to me.
A la casa. Por la casa.
Or maybe I came back to them.
Ay. Esa trabita en la puerta estaba rota.
Things I can't explain, but that I need you to try and...
Edith, what are you doing in here?
It's mine!
Edith!
Mom, you're gonna rip it! Let go! I kicked and screamed, but
Me sacó el librito.
Mom dragged me to the car.
Me sacó el librito.
I never saw Great Grandma Edie again.
Me enojé.
The next morning, the van came to pick her up, but she was already gone. After that, we moved around a lot.
Ay, yo hago eso cuando voy en
We
el
both
auto
tried to
con el
make the best
viento.
of it.
Eso, sí, así. Esa.
A few years went by. My mom didn't like to talk about it. But she started getting sick a lot. The rest happened pretty quickly. She got better for a while, and then she didn't. And then I was alone.
No.
The last Finch left alive. Until I found out about you.
No.
I'm still not sure what to tell you about all this. If we lived forever, maybe we'd have time to understand things. But as it is, I think the best we can do is try to open our eyes. And appreciate how strange and brief all of this is. This journal was supposed to be for you. But now I hope you'll never see it.
No, ¿cómo?
I just want to meet you. And tell you all these stories myself.
No, se va a cagar
But I
María.
guess if you're reading this now,
No.
things didn't work out that way. This is where your story begins. I'm sorry I won't be there to see it. It's a lot to ask, but I don't want you to be sad that I'm gone. I want you to be amazed that any of us ever had a chance to be here at all.
Ay, no estoy llorando.
Good luck.
No. Es un guachín. Ay, re tierno. No, bueno, me matás, me estás matando. No, no es necesario. Ay, es re lindo. Ay, es muy tierno el juego. Ay, amo que hayan puesto tipo fotos de ellos de chiquitos. Tipo, no. Bueno, me siento un vacío. Siento un vacío ahora. No. Y uno está, tipo, hasta el final está muy bien hecho. No. Están los playtesters, todos. No. No. Re lindo el juego. No, re lindo. Bueno, al final salió bien jugar el jueguito nuevo. Yo conseguí, boludo, yo conseguí 3 logros de mierda. Mira, Ignita consiguió 700. 3 de 9 conseguí nada más.